I never thought a simple gift would rearrange the way I see trust, loyalty, or the people I thought I knew best. When I bought my younger brother that phone, I honestly believed I was doing something kind, something supportive, something a big sister should do. I didn't expect the same device I placed in his hands out of love would be used against me before the night was even over. But that's the thing about betrayal, it never sends a warning. It doesn't knock, it just steps in, quiet and sharp, and you don't feel the cut until much later. That morning, I had woken up feeling almost proud of myself. He'd been struggling in school, struggling socially, struggling to feel like he fit anywhere. I kept telling myself a new phone might help. Maybe he could join group chats, connect with classmates, feel less isolated. Maybe it would make him smile the way he hadn't in weeks. And the way he hugged me when I handed it to him, I remember that moment so clearly. His arms around me, tight, grateful, like I'd just lifted a weight off his chest. For a moment, it felt like I'd done something right. I didn't know then that sometimes the warmest moments are the ones that cut the deepest in hindsight. We spent the afternoon setting everything up. I helped him log into his apps, transfer contacts, choose a wallpaper. It felt like bonding, something we'd lost over the years as we got older. But I savored it. I didn't get many chances like that anymore. Life had gotten noisy work, routines, responsibilities, and somewhere along the way, I stopped noticing how far we'd drifted. That day, though, it felt like the gap was closing, like maybe he still needed me the way he used to. But people can need you and still hurt you. Sometimes those two truths stand side by side. By evening, I was making dinner while he stayed in his room, exploring his new phone. I could hear occasional laughter from behind the doorlight, excited, relieved, and that made me smile. At least at the time it did. I didn't realize laughter could hide things. I didn't realize excitement could come from the wrong place. I didn't know his silence wasn't innocence. It was preparation. My mistake was thinking good intentions protect you. They don't. Not from people you love. Not from people you trust. When I finally knocked on his door to call him for dinner, he startled. Not just surprised, startled. Like he'd been doing something he shouldn't. He clutched the phone close to his chest, screen tucked into his palm, shoulders tense. I paused. Something in me tightened, but I pushed it aside. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to ruin the day we'd had, so I pretended not to notice the way he avoided eye contact. If I'd trusted my instincts then, maybe things would have unfolded differently. Dinner was quiet. He ate fast, barely speaking, and kept checking the time on his new phone. I should have questioned it. Instead, I convinced myself he was just excited, that he was talking to new friends. I even told myself this was good, exactly what I wanted for him. It didn't cross my mind that he might be using that phone for something very different, something that involved me. But the truth has a way of catching up, even when you try to outrun it. When he disappeared back into his room after eating, I stayed up late cleaning the kitchen, replaying the day in my head, the gift, the smile, the hug, the way I felt like a good sister for the first time in a long time. I didn't know those memories were on the verge of shattering. I didn't know they were already being twisted into something I wouldn't recognize when morning came. Because that phone, the one I bought with my own money, the one I carefully wrapped and handed to him with love, would become the tool he used to expose something I thought was safe, something personal, something I never imagined he would share with anyone else. And the worst part? He didn't even wait 24 hours. By midnight, the betrayal was already in motion. I remember sitting on the couch later that night, unaware of what he had already sent, already shown, already shared. I remember thinking tomorrow would be better for him, that maybe this small gesture had opened a door for us to reconnect. I didn't know he had opened a very different door, one that let my private world spill into someone else's hands. And as I sat there, unaware, he was still in his room, typing, sending, betraying, all with the gift I gave him, all before the day even ended. I didn't want to believe it at first. All day long, I kept replaying his face from the moment I handed him the phone. The shock, the grin he tried to hide, the way he kept turning the box over like he was afraid someone might snatch it away. That moment had felt beautiful, pure, like I'd finally done something right as his older sister. So why, barely 24 hours later, Was there already this tight, sour heaviness in my stomach like some part of me already knew something had gone wrong? He was quiet the whole morning. Too quiet. Every time I walked past him, he'd tilt the screen away, or lock it fast, pretending he was just scrolling like normal. And maybe if it had been anyone else, I would have brushed it off. But I knew him. I'd raised him, essentially. I'd been the one to show up to parent-teacher meetings, the one who covered for him in front of Mom when he stayed out too late, the one who sat with him through panic attacks he never admitted to having. I knew his tells, and that morning, every single one of them was flashing. Still, I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. It was his first phone. Of course he'd be protective of it. Of course he'd be glued to it. Of course he'd want privacy. I told myself I was overthinking. But the thing about intuition? It whispers before it screams. By afternoon, he disappeared into his room and shut the door. Not slammed, not locked, just shut, soft, quiet. The way someone closes a door when they don't want you to hear what's happening on the other side. I knocked once. Hey, everything okay? Yeah. Short, sharp, not angry, nervous. That wasn't like him. Around dinner time, my cousin, let's call her Aisha, texted me. And that was the moment everything started unraveling. She wrote, "Why did your brother send me this?" Below her message was a screenshot. Blurry, cropped, but clear enough. It was my brother, texting her, flirting with her. And not playful joking like cousins sometimes do. No. These were messages a 14-year-old should not have been sending to a 17-year-old, my cousin, my best friend growing up, someone I trusted completely. My throat went cold. I remember staring at my screen, rereading the messages over and over, hoping there was some explanation that made sense. Some misunderstanding. Some way this could be anything except what it looked like. But it was all right there in the texts. Compliments. Winking emojis. A voice note where he whispered like he thought he was being seductive. I felt sick. I'd bought him that phone. I'd handed it to him with love. And the very first thing he did was use it to cross boundaries with someone in our own family. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. Aisha kept apologizing, saying she blocked him, saying she didn't want me to think she encouraged it, which she didn't. Not even for a second. She was confused, embarrassed, and trying to tell me gently without crushing me. And I appreciated her for that. But I couldn't shake the shame crawling up my neck. Because while it wasn't my fault, it still felt like it was. Like I had put the weapon in his hand. Like I had set the whole thing in motion. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling the deep sting of something breaking inside me. Not anger, betrayal. He was supposed to be better than this. I'd spent years trying to guide him, protect him, teach him that respect matters, that boundaries matter, that women aren't toys for teenage attention. And knowing he'd taken something so pure a gift meant to help him and used it like this, it hurt in a way I hadn't expected. When I finally walked to his room, my hands were shaking. He didn't notice me at first. He was lying on his stomach, kicking his legs in that unconscious kid way, a small smile tugging at his mouth as he listened to something on the phone, probably a TikTok video. Or maybe he was replaying the voice note he sent her. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. I stood in the doorway for a full 10 seconds, just watching him. And for a moment, he looked so small, so innocent. The little brother who used to follow me around the house carrying his stuffed dinosaur. The kid who cried when I went on my first overnight trip. The boy who hugged me randomly for no reason at all. But innocence doesn't erase responsibility. "Give me the phone," I said. He froze, slowly rolled onto his side. His eyes went wide the way they did when he was trying to judge how much trouble he was in. "Why?" "Just give it to me." His face hardened. "No." One word. But it hit like a slap. Because that was the moment I knew he wasn't clueless. He knew. He knew exactly what he'd done. He knew exactly why I was asking. And he was already choosing defiance over honesty. My heart cracked a little. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lecture. I didn't accuse. I just held out my hand and repeated, "Give me the phone." The silence that followed felt like a pressure in the room, tight and heavy. Finally, he sat up, jaw clenched, and handed it over. I wish I could say I felt powerful or justified. I didn't. I just felt tired. And deeply, deeply disappointed. I didn't go through the phone right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was scared of what I'd find. There's a specific kind of fear that comes when you already know the truth but you're not ready to see it confirmed in writing. Screenshots make betrayal real. Messages make disappointment undeniable. So I just held the phone for a moment, staring at the lock screen, the same wallpaper I'd helped him pick out. A picture of us from last Eid. Both of us laughing, his arms slung around my shoulders. And now that image felt like a cruel joke. Like a memory that belonged to a different version of him. A version I wasn't sure existed anymore. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, eyes trained on the carpet. He wouldn't look at me. He didn't try to defend himself. He didn't even ask what I knew. And that told me everything. Why her? I asked quietly. He flinched, shoulders twitching like the question hit him physically. But he stayed silent. You could have talked to anyone, any friend, any random girl at school. But you chose her? Aisha? You knew she was family. Finally, he mumbled, I don't know. And that was the truth he didn't know. He wasn't thinking about consequences or family boundaries or how it would make me look. He wasn't thinking about anything except attention, validation, the thrill of a new phone and the power he suddenly felt having a private world at his fingertips. But knowing why didn't make it hurt less. I unlocked the phone. He didn't protest, which almost made me feel worse. Like he'd already given up before the conversation even started. The messages were exactly what Aisha had shown me plus more. There were voice notes he'd deleted but she had saved. Flirty emojis, awkward compliments, things he clearly didn't understand but tried to imitate from whatever TikTok boys he watched. I felt my face heat with secondhand embarrassment, but underneath the embarrassment was something much heavier. Shame and heartbreak. I wasn't angry at him for having feelings. He was a teenager, it was normal. What hurt was that he'd crossed a line he knew existed. He'd used the very gift I gave him, something meant to help him with school, with communication, with safety, and twisted it into something disrespectful. And he hadn't even had the phone for a day. When I looked up at him, his eyes were glossy, but he still wasn't crying. He was doing that thing where he clenched his jaw so hard you could see the muscle twitching. He was trying so hard to appear older, tougher, emotionless, but he wasn't any of those things. He was a scared kid who'd made a stupid, hurtful choice. What were you thinking? I finally asked. He shrugged again because he didn't have real answers. Just impulses, insecurity, and the sudden adrenaline rush of having more freedom than he knew how to handle. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you understand how serious this is? Do you understand how uncomfortable you made her feel? How much trouble she could have gotten into because of this? How much trust you broke? He shook his head, almost like he didn't want to hear the words, didn't want to absorb the weight of them. So I softened my voice. Look at me. Slowly, reluctantly, he raised his eyes. And there it was, the guilt, the fear, the realization that he'd crossed a boundary he couldn't undo. And maybe for the first time since this all started, I saw my little brother again. I'm not your enemy, I said gently. But I can't defend you when you're wrong. And this was wrong. His lip trembled. His voice was tiny when he finally spoke. Are you going to tell Mom? The question shouldn't have hurt, but it did. Because instead of worrying about Aisha, or me, or the damage he caused, he was worried about getting caught. I sighed softly. Right now, I'm asking you why you did it. He swallowed hard. I don't know. She was being nice, she replied fast. She didn't ignore me like others do. And I don't know. I kept going. I wasn't thinking. There it was, the truth in its rawest form. He wasn't thinking. Kids rarely do when they want attention. But intentions don't erase the impact. I sat beside him, not too close, but close enough that he could feel my presence. I wasn't trying to be his judge. I was trying to be his sister again. The one who looked out for him. The one he trusted. The one who didn't give up on him, even now. You should have talked to me, I said quietly. About anything. Even if you were curious, confused, whatever, you could have come to me. I know, he whispered. And instead, you went to someone who trusted you. Someone who trusted me. He winced at that. and good he needed to understand the gravity. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that feels too heavy to break, and then, in the smallest voice, he said, "I didn't think it would matter." That sentence stabbed deeper than anything else, because that meant he didn't think I would matter, that my reputation with Aisha wouldn't matter, that the example I tried to set for him wouldn't matter, that the boundaries I'd worked so hard to instill didn't matter. I closed my eyes for a second, steadying myself. "It matters," I whispered, "more than you know." And for the first time since the whole thing began, he nodded. "Okay," he said, "I'm sorry." The apology wasn't perfect. It wasn't fully formed or deeply reflective, but it was real, and that was the first step. I handed the phone back to him, but not for him to keep, for him to face the consequence. "We're not done," I said. "But I need you to understand something before we go any further." His eyes widened, nervous again. "You broke my trust," I continued. "But you're still my brother. I'm not giving up on you. Not now, not ever. But things have to change." He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said again, and for the first time that day, I believed him. I didn't punish him immediately, not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because sometimes punishment without understanding only builds resentment, and I didn't want resentment. I wanted change. Real change. The kind that comes from reflection, not fear. So, instead of lecturing him right there in his room, I told him to put on his shoes. He blinked. "Where are we going?" "For a walk," I said. He didn't argue this time. Maybe he was too drained. Maybe he sensed this wasn't the time to fight back. We walked out into the cool evening air, the kind that softens anger whether you want it to or not. The street was quiet, a few porch lights flickering on, the sky warming into sunset. We walked in silence for a while. It wasn't awkward, it was needed. Space to breathe, space to think. Space for him to understand that what happened wasn't going to be handled behind a closed bedroom door like a small inconvenience. It was something bigger, something that required clarity. "You know," I finally said, "I didn't buy that phone just because I wanted to spoil you." He kept his eyes down. "I bought it because I wanted you to feel trusted, because I wanted you to feel like you were growing up, and I wanted to support that. I wanted to show you that I believed in you." He kicked a pebble on the ground, watching it roll ahead of us. "I know," he murmured. "But what you did," I said gently, "it wasn't grown up. It wasn't mature. It was hurtful, and it put someone you care about in a very uncomfortable position." "I said I'm sorry," he whispered, frustrated and ashamed all at once. "I heard you," I said, "and I believe you meant it. But apologies don't magically undo things. You have to learn from this." He let out a long breath. "I didn't think she'd tell you." That sentence hit me differently. It wasn't mean-spirited, it was honest, raw, the way kids confess when they're finally too tired to hide. "Do you think the problem is that she told me?" I asked. His silence told me everything. He wasn't upset about the action. He was upset about getting caught. So I stopped walking and turned to face him. "The real problem," I said slowly, "is that you didn't respect her. And you didn't respect me." His eyes softened, guilt washing through them again. "I didn't mean to disrespect you," he said. I wanted someone to notice me." There it was, the truth underneath every mistake he'd made. He wanted attention, validation, to feel seen, to feel older, to feel like someone liked him. "You are noticed," I said softly. "Maybe not in the flashy, dramatic way social media makes you think you need, but the people who love you, we see you." He swallowed hard. "And the phone, it wasn't supposed to make you someone else," I continued. "It was supposed to help you become a more responsible version of yourself. But instead, you tried to use it to feel significant in the wrong way." He rubbed his face. "I didn't think it was wrong." I nodded. "And that's exactly why we're talking now. Because you need to understand where the line is before something worse happens." His voice cracked slightly. "Are you going to take the phone away?" I took a deep breath. The easy answer would have been yes. One swift punishment. Case closed. But I wasn't here to win a power struggle. I was here to teach him something lasting. "I'm not taking it forever," I said. "But I am taking it until I know you're ready to use it responsibly." He nodded slowly, accepting it. Not happily, but genuinely. "What do I have to do?" he asked. And that question told me he was finally ready to listen. "You're going to write an apology to Aisha," I said. "A real one. Not an excuse, not something dramatic. Just honest and respectful." His eyes widened. "Do I have to?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because she deserves it, and because learning to take accountability is part of growing up." He groaned softly but didn't argue. "Progress. And after that," I continued, "we're going to set some rules for the phone. Together. Not because I want to control you, but because boundaries help you make better choices." He looked down at his feet. "Okay." We started walking again, the tension slowly easing. After a few minutes, he spoke quietly. "You're not mad at me anymore?" I smiled softly. "I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. But disappointment isn't permanent unless you stop trying to be better." He nodded again, and for a moment, he looked so young, so vulnerable, and so much like the little brother I'd grown up protecting. "I'll be better," he said. And I believed him not because he said it, but because he finally understood why he needed to. When we got home, he handed me the phone without me asking. Not in anger, not in fear, but in acceptance. And somehow, that small gesture meant more than anything. Because trust doesn't break all at once. And it doesn't rebuild all at once either. But step by step, he was trying. And that mattered. Later that night, after he'd gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room with the phone beside me. Not checking it, not scrolling through anything, just letting the weight of the day settle. Being an older sister is strange. You're not a parent, but you're not just a sibling either. You're something in between, someone they look up to, someone they test limits with, someone they expect to catch them even when they jump blindly. And despite everything he did, despite how deeply he hurt me, I still wanted to catch him, still wanted to guide him, still wanted to protect him from becoming the kind of person who doesn't learn from their own mistakes. I looked down the hallway toward his room and felt something soften inside me. Yes, he messed up, badly. But kids don't grow by being perfect. They grow by facing the consequences of their imperfections. And tomorrow, he'd start doing exactly that. I picked up the phone again, my gift to him. The thing that had caused so much trouble in less than a single day. I ran my thumb over the case, feeling the sting of betrayal mix with something unexpected. Hope. Because every mistake is a fork in the road. And every apology is a step in a new direction. He had chosen to step forward. And I had chosen to walk with him. I turned off the light, the house dipping into quiet darkness, and whispered to myself, "He'll grow from this." And somehow, I knew he would.